rival rousers. We got to find out when we're going to get the teams. I'm getting tired of seeing my name emblazoned across.
a dozer now.
I don't want to hear that.
I know. I was running it yesterday, and then it started like, it would pop out of gear, almost like in the park. So I don't know if it's a sensor that's messed up or loose wire.
Well, we have John Blees coming in this weekend,
Thursday, yep.
so I got to see if my rig is running.
We have vehicles. We have Troy's pickup and we have the blue Suburban, so we have a vehicle for him. And the Suburban's in the shop right now. We brought it in there and I fixed the door latches and the heater and so.
Well, that's a nice little vehicle when it's, the Expedition.
You unlock the door?
Yeah. Oh, it's locked? Yeah, who wants people at a public meeting?
Hi, Glenn.
Hey, Amy, how you doing?
If you can hear me, I'm probably going to leave my video off until you invite us to visit. Does that sound good?
Well, I am not in control here. Bryant is in control. This is the man that runs everything. You're just coming in over my Zoom. Soon it'll be Teams. That's what we're working on.
I don't think she could hear a single thing you said.
Okay.
Okay, now we're live.
She's a good lip reader.
I hope you are a good lip reader. I don't have any control who comes in here. Bryant has the control.
It's gonna just be like us two and.
I think we're all vaccinated in here, and that means we don't have to wear face
I
masks.
know, right? Yay.
We're all literally in our social bubble when you stop and think about it.
We are.
Oh. Ah.
Don't start doing that
I
on me.
know, right?
All I
I
need.
woke up from about an hour's nap.
Yeah.
I just finished shoveling the steps at the police station and their porch, and I'm going like, boy, after I do that, I really want to go take a nap.
I know, right? Oh, I didn't sleep well last night because it was just howling.
I didn't sleep as well either, so maybe that's what it was.
Yeah, they gotta get a better procedure at the dispatch office because last night I was pushing snow. They called me on my phone, I answered and they said they needed to make sure the road was open on East 3rd Avenue. So I did that and went down K Street and I said, okay, the ambulance, it can come down K Street and 3rd Avenue. And Jimmy had told them they had a fire or a call earlier in the evening and he told them to keep an eye on the ambulance bay and stuff to make sure they hadn't had no problems getting in and out of it. Well, they didn't. Jimmy pulled out this morning and got stuck.
In the ambulance?
Right. And lucky it wasn't a big emergency.
Yeah.
They hauled the lady up to the ER. And
Yeah, I've heard all about that.
So, yeah. If I would have known that, I would have went up there and cleared it for him, but I didn't know.
Yeah.
I'm
This-
too busy pulling the police officers out.
I did my share shovel and this snow, I mean, it just stinks to shit.
I got one council member here.
It's bad because it's wet and it's
Yeah, it
just
sticks to your
slippery.
snow.
Yeah, this is the snow that you hate because it usually is power line snapper snow and everything else. And
I thought yeah.
fortunately,
Not done.
Well, it's bad for us too because we get no traction in it when we're trying to
Yeah.
push it.
well, to give you, I got a shovel. You can go out and wake yourself
I
up.
was gonna say, I just did shovel, I've been shoveling all afternoon.
Hey, Mark.
Oh, what a difference
John coming or no?
10 hours makes.
Yeah, I thought he was participating by.
7:15.
I'm good, and you?
Doug is stuck somewhere.
The grader to come by.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, it was like,
I mean,
Well, I originally was up
Pretty
at,
tough tonight.
well, my wife got the call about 5:15 and stuff.
State to come out, you have to wait for the state to come out that way, huh?
I called Dave.
yeah,
My manager's out in Dave's opening.
I mean, they got there,
Have
I
some coffee and
don't
come
know,
in.
9 something maybe.
And
And then Evans, he came behind us and he's like, well, I'll put the hole through And then if you get to the hospital, you have a nurse card. So-
Yeah, I'm sure it was nasty.
Once we saw him go through, we're like,
Because-
nope.
Normally they push it to the side and it's not nice. I just think white.
Yeah,
Who's Jeffy 12?
yeah.
So.
That's,
Tiffany is Adam.
that's,
Talk to
that's,
Mike and have them put kind of
Jennifer.
cables on the back of them Explorers and stuff for hooking up tow chains.
Well, we got a quorum.
I pushed one out this morning, there's nowhere to hook up to it, so I pushed it.
There's a lot of
So,
vehicles that
but
have nothing
they
to
need,
hook up to
everything's
it.
still on the cabs, or whatever.
For me and who?
Yes.
We have Jennifer, Adam, Dick.
Underneath looking for the axle.
You can't, there's no axle on them anymore. No, there's not. There's CV shafts, there's A-arms just like the front end.
Oh, yeah, no.
And they're real easy to bend, so,
Great.
yeah, I just need to put stuff like that on the points of the cars, you can pull it anywhere.
Yeah, that's. That's a design flaw. They don't think about having to get pulled out.
Oh, no, they're not the company. Home Alaska.
If you've been vaccinated, this is a vaccinated zone now.
I have been vaccinated.
This is a vaccinated zone. We can socialize without wearing our face mask, according to the CDC.
I'm super uptight.
So,
I'm vaccinated, but I'm almost 60. And I listen to all those epidemiologists, and it's scary.
well, there's no doubt, but
But that's good to know that if everybody in this room is vaccinated, double plus their waiting period.
I'm 2 months past my last shot, yeah.
yeah, some of us were the earliest to get them in here in the city.
You know, they said a really interesting thing on my call today about the people who have had COVID.
Something else?
I tried to make it go longer.
Got done anyway?
By the way, Dave, can we get a decent shovel here at City Hall?
Yeah.
Just
When I
leave
get a
it.
chance.
Just leave it in the closet. I was trying to help you today, man.
Yeah.
I didn't go up and hit us.
Pneumatic shovel in the shop so I can fix it in the morning.
Oh.
The boiler was,
Yeah.
wasn't getting fuel at Nome. Got started and the fuel going. And then the expansion tank decided to, we had an extra one. Yeah, so I was doing that.
Yeah, I'll,
Remember people-
probably do it after we're done at City Hall, so take a run up there.
3 people texting me if we do orders, won't close, they won't close. But I'll get it there, when I get there, I'll,
Yeah. Oh, I shove it out.
no, figure it out for me.
What training you guys last week? How's that?
Really? That's good.
Good. What were you in Vegas for?
It would have been nice to have been in Vegas to actually see the people.
Probably was a little warmer there than here.
It's been cold in Vegas this year.
Still would have been warm for me.
Shoot, I think now is warm. You wore a jacket over here. 25 is kind of nice.
Well, if you want to be the HR manager, they always have their annual convention in Vegas.
I'm good.
There you go, Dave.
There's nothing good in Vegas.
I don't know if it's worth it.
There's nothing good in Vegas for me.
Ours are never fun, like the one for us for the ICMAs in Portland this year.
Oh, that'd be good.
Yeah, but we don't go to the fun places like Tampa, not Tampa, Orlando or anything like that because we can't.
Librarians do. We go to Orlando. We go to New Orleans.
I don't know what Park and Rec is. Indianapolis.
And then antifreeze was dark brown.
I thought he just, well, it was just changed when Mike did the, I thought Troy did something to it too.
I think he changed the motor on it.
Yeah.
But yeah, when it shot out, it was dark brown and I closed all the valves off and took the tank off. Still a little bit of pressure on it.
A little bit.
A little bit. You got a little taste of it.
You probably shouldn't sweet anymore?
We actually had an extra one.
Yeah.
So that was good.
Who's on the phone?
Yeah, it must be. The ladder. Just a little tiny.
We changed them, Mark. At least one a year
You
now.
have to have your chair if John doesn't.
More, past 3 years, 4 years.
Remember, you're opening up.
Dog pound's having some issues with their door or something.
Like the door to their little
The
office.
dog pound.
Outer door. Ice out of it.
It's like,
I was gonna say, you
I'll
got
put
ice.
it on my list.
Probably got ice
Agenda for this, so.
Exactly.
Well, the agenda primarily is, you have the funding source in the capital improvement program. Plus, it's what the council would like to see the city do, and to see if we make sure include it in the budget.
There you go. You gotta approve it.
We ready then?
Well, we got the money.
Or are we gonna wait for John?
Aaron was staying off to the side, so he didn't get much view.
We have a quorum, we can move, and we don't need a quorum for work session.
Was John planning on hooking up?
I had assumed so, I thought he was gonna be in by,
He got stuck in Anchorage because of the storm.
I texted him twice, he's not responding.
Well,
There's a Foster building on the back. Thing was.
so we'll call this work session to order at 5:38. And we don't take roll call for work session, no? Present are Gerald, Megan, Jennifer, and Adam. And myself. City manager Glenn Steckman and city clerk. The other guy. So Glenn will clue us into what we're gonna meet about.
This meeting is really a couple parts. One is what the council would like to see for the future to be included in the budget, or for goals, so that the department heads are here attending this meeting. We've got Dave Barron, we've got Chip Leeper, we've got Deputy Chief Pruckner, we've got Joe Horton, we got Marguerite La Riviere, we've got Amy Phillips, and Key Crow, Joy Baker, and Dana Handelin on the phone. We do not have Drew McCann, who represents the Visitor Center, here right now. So we've got a good grouping. The fire is also not here. In your council packet was a capital budget by funding source. And Mark, if you want me to go through that, so that these are things that we are looking
Yes, please.
at. Okay, you set aside this year $100,000 in City Hall for the heating and ventilation upgrades. The city also had a roughly $350,000 surplus from the 2019-2020, and we are asking that surplus be assigned to do the heat and ventilation upgrades for this facility, which are going to be in the neighborhood of $450,000 to up to $500,000. The engineering is getting ready to proceed. It does not have to go out to bid because it is under $50,000 according to our solicitor. Information technologies, there's nothing there. Planning and engineering has $35,000. which is around this amount that we budget every year. In police, there is a question of whether we need a new dispatch and radio system, or do we need an upgrade to our repeaters, which would make our radios more efficient. We do have set aside in our E911 fund $500,000 to address that project. So the police are also asking for 2 vehicle replacements. The question is, do we go with expeditions or with F-150s? They're also asking for an ATV side-by-side. This vehicle would be used to rescue people on the other side of the wall, but is also to go and patrol in the West Beach area. That was the area that Florence was last seen, and we have people camping out there. And Dave is working on the signage for that in his spare time. So fire is requesting a washer and dryer. Now this is to deal with their turnout gear. This is not your normal washer and dryer that you would have at your house. Obviously that there are a lot of cancerous type of materials that will adhere to a turnout gear when they're at a fire. There's a lot of the materials that are being used in homes now, especially in furniture, have a basis of materials that can be cancer causing. They're also looking for electrical upgrades for $10,000, and they're looking for a 40-foot container to store a vehicle. Ambulance is not looking for anything. Public Works is looking for a vehicle. They are also requesting a new loader and a new dump truck. The monofill obviously is our engineering services, and the city has set aside for the landfill and monofill $3 million, $3.3 million for closures. We want to review that. They're also looking for a dozer. The conveyor for the tire shredder needs to be replaced, and they're looking for a portable litter fence. Stedman Park, as you may recall, was closed last year because of the cap issues. This would entail, and we're having John Blees look at this, but to put asphalt back down and level the basketball court and bringing stone in to make sure the land, that park is properly capped, and that we have a playground for basketball there next year. Nome Recreation Center, there is $57,457 in the Nome Winter Sports Association to help move their ice rink. We still don't have final cost. We also are meeting with them on Friday this week to further discussions. We still have heat and vent upgrades, which would be in the neighborhood of $1.7 million. We have equipment replacement for cardio for $10,000, and we have locker room upgrades for $1 million, and there's no designated funding. However, Chip Leeper and I have been discussing the possibility of trying to package this together with the roof, the heating and ventilation, which may end up being the city's expense, but to tap Rasmussen and NSEDC for the improvements to the locker room upgrade. We have no numbers on page 4 of your packet. We have no numbers right now on the pool upgrades. The Nome Belts junior high, senior high roof replacement is $2 million. Other high school renovations are $6 million. There's no funding. Going down to the Port of Nome, we're looking for grant funding for the Deep Arctic Port for $450. And I should probably turn this over to Joy on the port. I hate to throw it right back up to you, Joy, but if you want to discuss these, because you're actually better informed than I am on this.
Greetings, folks. Let me find that page and I will jump
Page
right
4 of
in
your
where
packet.
Glenn was. Page 4 of the packet. Well, I have about 14 PDFs open and I just found it. So, just happens to be on my page. Imagine that. So, the 450,000 Glenn just mentioned on the grant funding, we have that in a state designated grant that has been set aside for the design, cost share match with the Corps for the general navigation features of the Arctic Deep Draft Port. The port security one in the grant column, that is one that we are discussing. We're hoping to discuss with IT for submitting if we have an eligible project that is needed. The grants are out, they're open and available, 25% match. So that explains the $25,000 column on the port fund side. I'm confident that we have needs. I just need to discuss it with IT before we decide whether to push this or let it go until next year. Inner Harbor Concrete Launch Ramp, that at 1.957 under grant funding is EDA money. The 114,000 on the port fund side, that is the city's cost share match. And then the 1.9 presently reflects 1.6 of EDA money, I stand corrected, and 300,000 in NSCDC money. We have been verbally told that our request for additional funds has been approved under EDA, but all the paperwork has not. So we're hoping to get that here in the next couple of weeks, but that'll take that up to, I think, in the 2.7 range. The Inner Harbor Deepening minus 12, cap 107, 270,000 is grant funding. Again, a direct legislative grant that has been set aside, and that is the F-22 portion of what we believe the cost share will be for that feasibility phase. And then the ones below and under industrial park, those are all, as you will see, under the port fund column. We're hoping to achieve some of these. We can certainly discuss them in detail and prioritize these. We are looking at hopefully seeking grant funding, but we don't have any right now. I would say if I was going to prioritize right now, I would say that the Thornbush subdivision development, we are seeking grant funds for that, but we are actually also looking to do some preliminary engineering to ensure that this settlement isn't as severe as the first 9 acres was. 25,000 for the Port Road Improvements Project. That is just incidentals to when the project starts with the our cost share with the engineering with DOT, because that project should be bidding in May or June of this year. Garco rehabilitation, of course, that is something we're trying to improve that project. Joe and I have been talking to Lucas about how to do it in-house with some insulated panels so that we can start capturing some revenue from that building again. And the last item, the operating port security to 25,000, that was an error on my part. I miscommunicated with Nikki, and you can just ignore that.
And then
I think that's it.
Thank you. And then the following two, shows projects completed on pages 5 through 8. So, Mr. Chair, there are department heads in here who may want to talk about what they're trying to do, or how do you wish to go forward?
It would be nice, since they're here, to get them to explain and pitch what they're looking for in capital improvements.
We'll start with the police chief, excuse me.
Good evening. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah, well, amazing. Mainly look up there. I can hear you.
On behalf of the police department, we are looking for 2 vehicles for our fleet. We have one right now that is, the transmission just went out on. That is going to be costly to fix. We've had a lot of problem with our older expeditions going in frequently for repairs. We got 2 F-150s and they've been working out great. And we've had discussions with the city manager as to the troops themselves like the F-150s. The city manager kind of prefers the expeditions, so we've kind of gone back and forth a little bit, but we are in need for 2 vehicles, 2 new vehicles for the year. And we would be happy with anything that city council would provide us. Additionally, we were looking for a side-by-side to assist us in patrolling parts of the city that typically don't get the patrolling they should get, okay? The idea with this would be a greater police presence and also the ability to move people in a safe and effective way rather than trying to carry people over rocks and stuff down by the sea down there where we, especially this time of year when you're walking and there's cracks in the snow and you get your foot stuck between the rocks, it's dangerous for not only the people we're trying to assist, but also the officers doing it. So that is the request for the side-by-side. And again, we would be happy to share that with emergency services, the fire department, or anybody in the city that needed it. But I think it's necessary to have one for the city that we're able to use. As far as additional things, are we talking about personnel here too, or are we talking just, okay. And looking at the audit that was recently done on the police department, Greg Russell pointed out that there was deficiency in training. And that, we, as an agency, have to do a better job of getting our people, getting them on a regular training thing, and to get them where they need to be, and to ensure that everybody has the same training. We've requested an increase in that from $70,000 to $90,000, and the reason for that is to try to get everybody up to where they needed to be according to the audit, but also understanding that we're going to have to send officers to be certified. Or if they're not certified, we're going to have to send them through the full basic exam. Okay, we have several vacancies we're trying to fill now. We're in the process of doing that. We have several in background and a lot of other applications that we're reviewing. But we look at this year being an expensive year of getting people trained. So that is kind of our request in that.
We're not talking about your budget in general, we're just talking about capital products.
Oh, okay.
I mean, the radio system, which the chief didn't mention, we need to engage, I think we're gonna have to engage John Blees to help us put in an RFP so we know what we're doing. But, we don't have anybody on staff that can do that.
I agree with that, and I also think we need to put that as a high priority level for the city. We've had some incidents recently where transmissions are not being received by officers and put some people in danger.
Regarding that, there, you mentioned, Glenn, about that it's gonna come out of E-911 funds.
Yes.
And this is maybe a question for Nikki, on Nikki's balance sheet from last meeting. Is that not E-911 funds part of the cash?
For the general,
line?
no, it's not part of the general fund. If I remember right, Nikki. It's a separate.
E911 is in Fund 13 special revenue.
So it's not in the general fund.
But where's the money sitting on the balance sheet? Because that's what I'm wondering.
Fund 13 has its own balance sheet and the funds are in the general fund checking.
I want to point out that, not that I want to get into this because I don't have the paperwork in front of me. The 8.7 million is really not all uncommitted funds. A good portion of them are committed or assigned for, let's say, the capping of the landfill. $3.3 million of that 8.7 goes right there. Okay, Chief.
Thank you.
Is there any council members
Sorry.
online that have questions for the chief about more vehicles or side-by-sides or anything?
This is Jennifer. I have a couple questions.
Okay, go ahead.
I heard you say something about you need 2 vehicles replaced, and I heard something about you want F-150s, but I didn't quite catch the expedition comment. If you would mind repeating that one.
Me and the city manager have, just had conversations about the department's fleet. The officers, this is their first year with the F-150s, and they've held up really well. But they're limited in space to a certain degree. They don't have the same amount of space that the Expedition does. And the city manager felt like we should have a mixed fleet as far as, some F-150s, but also some Expeditions for where we need that. The problem with the F-150 is if you have 2 prisoners, you can only transport 1. Because it's a smaller compartment. So it doesn't allow you all the flexibility of the Expedition, but they are cheaper. If that answers the question.
The F-150s are cheaper or the Expeditions are?
The F-150 is a cheaper vehicle.
And do you need the capacity for transporting, or do you prefer the versatility of the vehicle that you can use?
I think the city manager has a good argument on having a mixture of both. Where maybe, in opposite years, we could look at different vehicles. I think if we had all F-150s, that wouldn't work out well, because if you went to a call where you needed to transport more than 1 person, that's going to be troublesome to do. So I think if we have a mixture of vehicles in the fleet, we'd be okay with that.
Okay, so then your request is for 2 vehicles, maybe 1 of each. Is that what I understand?
I would certainly be happy with 1 of each.
Right now, they're budgeted for 2.
Okay.
They're budgeted for 2 Expeditions. Last year, the reason why we went to the F-150s, we could not get any vehicles. They were the only vehicles available to us. And previously, the city had been running with F-150s, except for Chief Popsadora wanted a pickup truck, and we went with that, and that became the chief's vehicle. And so we had a very elaborate hand around of vehicles, just so you know. But a pickup truck, unfortunately, is nice when sometimes we have to retrieve a body off the beach.
Got it. And then moving on to the side-by-side, you say you'd like it to use it to patrol areas. Is this patrol going to be a continuous patrol, or this just be sometimes when you think you need it? I mean, obviously the wintertime probably wouldn't be ideal, but you said you wanted to share it. So I'm just curious how that looks for sharing, because I know that the cemetery already has one. So isn't that one being shared, I guess, would be my first question, of why get another one if we're supposed to share?
I know that the one that belonged to the police department was transferred to the cemetery some years back. I'm not aware of any availability for the police department to have that. I'm just aware of many calls that we get on the other side of the rocks down there that require us climbing over the seawall rocks down to a person who's either injured, inebriated, or otherwise that needs help in being transported back across the rocks. And it's dangerous yourself walking through there, let alone trying to carry somebody else or help them across there. Not to mention there's a large part of the beachfront that isn't patrolled because of terrain and things like that we would be better able to be seen as far as trying to deter crime by being able to be out there and be seen. I hate to bring it up, but last fall is a great example of, if we would have been maybe regularly able to patrol that area, we would have had better results.
When Mr. Barron went out there and some other people, we've tried to use a regular 4x4, and sometimes the vehicles get stuck. I'm talking about a pickup truck. And we want to eliminate what has been happening out on West Beach, where people are out there and dealing drugs and everything else. So we want more enforcement out in that area to prohibit people from camping on the beach. And
Understand. It doesn't sound like something that's going to be able to be shared, though, from this conversation that we're having. It sounds like it's going to be solely for a police department use.
Well, we certainly wouldn't be opposed to, if fire and rescue needed it, or in other words, I certainly would not have any objection to sharing it with other, public safety in the city for whatever their uses are as well.
Jennifer,
So does the cemetery have a need for theirs without, I mean, it sounds like we already have one, and is the cemetery able to share theirs? Is that why you couldn't use it because they can't share it? Like, we have one, the city has one, but it obviously doesn't sound like it's being utilized.
Cemetery one isn't the greatest.
No.
you hear that, Jennifer?
340 or something.
Yeah, I know where he.
I did not, unless you were sitting near where you're sitting, it sounds quiet to me, I'm sorry.
Okay, the staff in the back was commenting the 4x4 or whatever they call
Not
it.
sufficient enough. It's a smaller UTV and it's already decked out with stuff for holding all the lawn care equipment in it and everything
And it's reaching the end of its life.
Right.
I mean, eventually, when that dies, we'll probably go and get an older pickup truck or whatever. I wasn't here when they started passing it around. Now, what we talked with the fire chief today was that the vehicle would probably be stored at the fire hall, so it'd make it easier for the police to access it so they can go out and patrol without having to go all the way up to the fire, to the police station, which is a mile and a half more, turning around, coming back down, bringing the 4x4, and then going back and forth. So the fire chief felt that there would be occasionally times that it could be shared. I think what we're trying to avoid is what the staff has talked to me was they didn't use the side-by-side much, or it was not embraced by the leadership at that time. And I have mentioned to the staff today that if the council approves this, then I'm going to want to see a report of when that vehicle goes out and does its patrols, because we do want to avoid the drug marketplace on the beach out there.
Okay, thank you.
And the Nome River is during July and August, I don't think is in city limits either.
Sorry? Oh,
Patrolling out the Nome River when the fish are running. Does the rec center still work or no?
What?
Side by side? Or get the gator?
Yeah.
It wouldn't be.
I'd be happy to donate it,
That's what I figured.
and I'll take the new one.
Yeah. Anybody's willing to donate, I'll donate my vehicle to one of the new police vehicles.
Yeah, I don't think ours would be that adequate either.
I'll rent mine.
Okay, can we move on, Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Mrs. Leeper.
All right. As City Manager Steckman said, there's several items on our wish list, none of which should be a shock to anyone. I guess the first one is the simplest one, which is just the $10,000 for the cardio replacement. We request a new piece of equipment every year because our weight room, particularly our cardio equipment, is used pretty heavily and wears out. So one piece a year is usually adequate enough for us to either get a new treadmill, a new elliptical, or a new climber, or whatever else we get lots of requests for. The other one is a new pad at Stedman Park. Currently, things are on lockdown. I think this community could really benefit from an outdoor basketball court or something, at least in that space. We have very few open spaces in our community, and it's saddened me to see what little space we have under chain link fence. So as is, it's not really usable. Even if it wasn't a toxic waste pit underneath it, it's sagging. It holds water. Probably 60% of the surface is underwater at any given time. So that's the pad part. And then obviously anyone who's used our facility knows that our locker rooms probably haven't had any type of upgrade since they were, since the facility was built. They're worn, they're sagging, they're in need of a touch-up. I wish the price wasn't that steep, but I guess that's what the going rate is to remodel that type of space. And if we're gonna go in and put that type of money and effort into that space, we need an air handling system because the air quality is really poor, and it's poor in our whole facility, as you guys can imagine. You can't even build a facility anywhere close to the size of our facility without having an air handling system in it. So these type of retrograde fits obviously aren't cheap, but for the quality of the air and the people and whatnot that use it, it's probably something we'd need to consider. So that's pretty much my 4 things, if I can remember right. I'm not really asking for anything that I don't think we really need. Obviously, like I said, the price tags, I wish it was a little cheaper, but I guess it is what it is.
We are, you do have a bond that you're paying off this year, which is $169,000 a year cost. And what Chip and I have discussed, because there does not seem to be any grant funding out there for ventilation systems. We tried FEMA and we got turned down there when we thought, during the pandemic, that would be a perfect time. But to package replacement of the heating and ventilation and going to Rasmussen and the NSEDC to assist in definitely, covering the locker room replacement would be the potential of addressing the project that it was $1 million, and also to, with the city share being a portion of, if not all of, the ventilation system. And that's how we were thinking about packaging this to Rasmussen and to NSEDC. And we can talk about the pool.
Yeah. Well, I haven't asked for anything specifically big other than, we have discussed coming up with some sort of digital control box to do all the major variables of pool operation. As you guys probably may or may not know, we don't actually have a full-time pool manager, so we don't have someone in the facility all the time. And it certainly would make it easier to be able to assist in monitoring and adjusting levels from not being in the facility. And this is a project that we've kind of talked with Nana, they're kind of looking into things. That isn't the other part, which is the actual disinfection system for the pool. As you guys know, we currently have a saltwater disinfection system, which has some benefits, but has some drawbacks too. When we had Polar Pools up here, they strongly recommended us going back to the traditional chlorine feed system, which is what we had up until about 2006 when we installed the original salt disinfection system. And we've currently had 3 anodes that we've had to replace. The salt cells are pretty good when they're working, but they're expensive to maintain. They're even more expensive to replace the cells when they die, which is every 3 or 4 years. And they're currently wreaking havoc on the infrastructure of our pool because, I'm not going to say that salt disinfection systems are better or worse than a traditional chlorine feed system. But if you're really going to do a salt disinfection system, you probably need to decide that when you're actually designing the pool so they can make all the components and the infrastructure salt compatible. As it is, the majority of our stuff is older iron type piping, which you can imagine doesn't really like the salt. That's probably why our gutters are going to need to be replaced, because while the gutters are stainless, the joints and the welds aren't. And, we've had corrosion there. Our heat exchanger that we got about 4 or 5 years ago, which was supposed to last 20 years, is probably going to need to be replaced soon. It's, like I said, it's just really hard on the system that we have. And, if we decide that we're going to continue with the salt system, we can probably make it work. The costs are probably just going to continue to mount. And at some point, we're probably going to need to replace even more of the major components. So, if that's palatable to do that, we can stick with the salt disinfection system. If it isn't, we could go to a more traditional chlorine feed system. It wouldn't be expensive. But like I said, I can make either one of them work. It's
Eventually, the bottom line is, the pool does have a lifespan. Any pool does. And the question is, do we want to shorten the lifespan of the pool by frankly continuing using salt water, which is anything that either Chip or I have read. You make these decisions when you're installing your pool. You don't make them after you install it and change your system. So that's where we are. And I don't know what it would cost us to replace that pool right now.
Well, I can tell you, we're not going to get any outside money for it.
Yeah, well, those days are also over.
And then just one other thing that's probably on the little bit further horizon, and it probably is going to come under the schools instead of us, but at some point the air handling system that deals with the pool is going to have to be completely replaced because I get complaints from school people about moisture buildup and icicles coming out of here. We can't maintain a good, comfortable temperature in the locker rooms on deck. Though Nana is doing a really good job to do what they can to mitigate some of those problems. But like I said, I would suspect something coming down the line from them because since it's technically their facility. But just be aware that that's something that needs to eventually be probably replaced more sooner than later. But
Well,
no one need to ask for that.
that is also part of their discussions, that they're going to the state asking for $6 million in a control system to properly have the controls in there that can manage the various temperatures needed in the building. And it never gets high enough in the selection process. You may remember that Jamie Burgess mentioned that to you last year, and we are feeling the effects of that at the swimming pool.
Yeah, as you can imagine, pools are mostly designed to be self-standing facilities. Anytime you put a pool with something else, you're going to cause that something else to have some problems. And I get an earful every time I go out to watch my kids' game about it being hot in the gym or hot here or moist there. And my
So hindsight is always 20/20,
Yeah.
but it'd be good not to use the same consultant or engineer that sold us that saltwater conversion thing.
Yeah, I would agree.
I'm sure at the time, everybody thought it was hunky-dory to do that.
Yeah, well,
Now hearing what you're saying, it makes common sense that you.
at the time, it was billed as a green alternative. It's more efficient to use, and from a staffing standpoint, it's certainly much easier than dumping 50-pound bags of salt into the pool than it is to mix Cal Hypo into a mixing tank and make chlorine gas. And also, it's billed as being 90% self-recycling, which it technically is, but I mean, you're still using the same stuff. And like I said, what the salesman didn't say is, oh yeah, if you're already designed for a traditional pool, you might have a whole bunch of other problems, but that's not us. So if any...
I had another question for you. Under the summary of projects that the city manager put in our packet, it had a breakdown for the last couple of years on, I guess, allocation or wishes into, one that caught my eye mainly was the hockey rink. It said 219 budget, $123,062. 220 budget, $123,062. I don't think that was.
Yeah, in fact, actually, I didn't even bring that project up at all.
I'm pretty sure that wasn't spent, that may have been on a wish list or something.
Yeah, or was that money that they had gotten allocated through other beneficiaries, or was that money that had been budgeted by the council?
What?
There's money that I think the council wanted to budget. I don't know if you did. The project that they would like to build out there is probably a $2 million plus project.
So that leads me to my next question. What's the likelihood that we're gonna get that $2 million project?
I always try not to say slim or none.
Yeah, but pretty low.
Slim just left the house.
They have their goals, and we have met with them. Primarily right now, We are looking at relocating the proposed site of a building that they were going to look at, which was going to be in the neighborhood of about $1 million. Moving it around to the front, and Chip can explain it better. There's a lot of pluses for us and for them. Connectivity to water, the ability to use the bathrooms. Why don't you?
Well, first off, yeah, so for the past probably 5 or 10 years, we've met with, what I would call a loose coalition of guys and gals that have, volunteered their time to, have the rink, manage the rink, do the ice surface, all pretty much on a volunteer basis, though I think they do pay an attendant in the evenings to kind of make sure they have someone there to turn the lights on, keep an eye on things, check skates out, things like that. And, it was always kind of like someday, but now that that space is going to be taken up, the timeline has been updated drastically. So whether we do or don't have funding, their site is going away this summer when they start breaking ground. So I guess what I would say is that, there's kind of different members have run the gamut of what, is acceptable. I mean, some people just want to surface. Some people would like to see something that they could build on. And I think that the Nome Winter Sports Association has really, I guess, start to kind of figure out that if they really want something nice and big, that's going to require them to maybe seek, some outside funding sources and grants. They kind of have to formalize things a little bit more. And, I've talked to some of their members and they've been talking amongst themselves. And I think that has kind of culminated that they've actually kind of, looked at their charter or perhaps maybe even written their charter from scratch. They actually have board members. They're aware that, if they're going to be knocking on some entity's door asking for hundreds of thousands of dollars, they need something more than, hey, we're just a group of guys and gals that have been doing this. They realize that they need to kind of coalesce. And there's kind of like the old guard that's been doing it for a while, and they're hungry to pass, the responsibility on to the next generation. And there are some promising members in the next generation. And, particularly Blake Bogart, he's a bundle of energy when it comes to making sure that not only can they build something but have something that's sustainable. And he's a smart guy. He knows that what I just said. When they knock on someone's door and say, "Hey, we'd like $500,000," that they're gonna need to have boards. They're gonna need to be able to have an actual official organization. So he's got stars in his eyes, but, he's starting to build the foundation that maybe might make it a lot less unrealistic that they might actually be able to accomplish it. But I'm thinking just due to the actual, lack of time, that it might be something that's in steps where we do something that might just be boards, and we might need to build the boards from scratch. So, perhaps just leveling the space where we're going to put it. And I'm not sure. Do you have an idea of where we're kind of thinking, where I'd like to put it?
I know. I got an email from one of those older members trying to get out of it. That you're
You know
involved.
how it is. Just when you get out, they pull you back in.
Right, that's Mitch, and Mitch wanted to point out that they did spend $52,000 of their NSEDC money at one time for help to remove the tanks that were behind the rec center.
Yeah.
For the ice skating rink and the museum library.
Yeah.
They split it 3 ways basically in the budget thing. And they covered 52. So that's still where it's looking at?
No.
No. Okay.
And I think, and that was a couple city managers ago.
Yeah, it was a few.
Yeah, and I think she honestly had to make a decision. I think that money was allocated for a certain amount, and it sat around, and it sat around, and it sat around, and
It was for this purpose, but then this.
but then nothing happened, and I can't tell you how long it was sitting around, but I can tell you that she was getting frustrated that it was just sitting there, and I don't know if there was any external pressures that, hey, we got to spend this, but I know that when a situation came up that loosely fit the bill, that she decided to use it. So, and at the time there was a thought that behind us might make more sense, but I'd actually like to see it immediately to the east of us. And what I'm probably going to do is, if it works out this way, is I want to reorg the youth softball fields. And the one closest to us is typically the majors minors one, which is the bigger field. And then the one further east is what we did for the rookies and T-ball. And those rookies in T-ball, they just really don't need that big a field because, any dad who's gone through the program, if one kid hits it, it's going to roll a long way. So what I'd like to see done to better utilize the space, since there wasn't really a lot done in that kind of northeast corner, would be to move the big field as far east as we can, and then put probably a half scale to 2/3 size field, and then put the ice skate rink right parallel to us. There's a water hookup there. It also would make a nice, access to the parking lot, so they don't need to park on 6th Avenue. It just kind of seemed like there was more pros in putting it that way than behind us. And that's kind of just how I came about. I mean, but originally the plan was to put it back there, but the more I thought about it, the more I think that it just, I don't know if that makes the most sense to put it back there.
My only concern is if it's not enclosed, which is the ultimate dream or whatever.
Yeah.
That the amount of wind is drifting.
Well, please, John, and I wish John was here, but he's actually going to be coming up, and we actually are going to be meeting with the new board of the Northwest Sports Association. I'm sorry, the Nome Winter Sports Association. And one of the ideas that John had was to actually kind of go with a chain link fence with a geotech fabric kind of intermeshed between it, which would keep out the majority of the wind, but also allow them to still have the not have to produce their own cooling for the thing. So that would probably be the cheapest, quickest fix.
That's to block the wind.
Yeah.
Why did they take the fences down along 6th Avenue?
Which ones? Oh, because they were.
Prevent the snow from.
I was reading it. I didn't-
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, I mean, isn't,
Because we were replacing it.
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh yeah. Oh, the stuff we took out last year.
No, one of the things that always happens is when you put up a barrier, what happens is it drifts on the other side.
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's gonna drift.
So-
We're going to drift regardless.
Right now.
We're going to drift, yeah.
Well, not as bad.
We don't have to spend the whole time on this. My only question is, has any consideration been on, since we're looking at possibly capping Stedman Park, of putting the ice rink back over, or on Stedman Park?
The only potential negatives is depending on what type of structure they can get funding for. I don't know how far they can drive
They
down.
can't drive.
They can't.
They cannot drive down in the cap. I mean, we can re-level the cap, we can put asphalt, but we cannot drive into the cap, any poles or anything like
So
that.
the current ice rink situation would work fine there, but anything beyond that would.
Yeah, I mean, they could put dasher boards up because they don't go into the ground, and their anchors probably, I'd only go a couple feet, and that might not even be allowed. Yeah. So, but somehow our basketball goals have been able to get driven down in. So I guess I don't know the answer to that. I guess that was, I don't know.
We might still be paying the price because we have to have that monitored all the time, especially when we added some additional fence.
So are there any other council members that have questions of Chip while we have him available?
This is Jennifer. I don't have anything for Chip, but I do have a question for our consideration. He gave us a couple of heads up, and I'm just curious if we can make a note to start putting some money aside for the air handling system that he was discussing, and I would really like to continue to figure out this pool thing, because it sounds like we need to go back to our old way, as Mark suggested as well. I'm totally on board with that, because I see that pool just getting more and more expensive every year if we don't do something about it now.
Well, the ventilation system is a bondable project because it'll have a life greater than 20 years, because the existing one is 40. That's usually an acceptable bondable issue. You have a bond that will be completely redeemed. This year, and this budget year is the final payment. So that's something that's going to have to be discussed later with the council, because even if we put aside $100,000 a year, it would take us 17 years, and by that time, the whole system would go. I mean, we are, there are two priorities with our city engineer. One is the rec center is number one, City Hall was number two. City Hall is more easily achieved through a budget process than dealing with the HV system at the rec center. And that's why Chip and I were looking at going to Rasmussen and NSEDC and say, look, we've got this $250,000 project, let's say, and can you help fund portions of it, and we'll fund the balance of it. And I think that was what we've kind of discussed as a strategy to show that the city has some skin in the game.
What about the hospital? Are they able to help with any of that, considering it's a health facility, for people to keep fit?
Well, maybe they'll pay for the cardio piece of equipment. We've never thought about that. We can ask them.
They can only say no.
Yeah.
I mean, they.
But they're not a foundation.
Employees, yeah.
They're not, the Rasmussen is a foundation. The NSEDC has been very generous and supportive of recreation and everything else. And I think, they've been very generous to the pool at times. So, I mean, it's something that we can reach out and ask the hospital.
Why not?
Any other board member questions? Council member?
Yeah, this is Gerald. I'm not sure that we do this right away, but I'd like to, and I'm not sure if Chip's the right one to talk to about it, but expansion of a community garden concept. It's come up a couple of times, and I'd just kind of like to get it on our radar, if not for this summer, for possibly the next summer. I'm thinking, the city could identify and provide a piece of land, probably on East End, down in the area that's basically you can't build on because it's too swampy and whatnot. And either lease lots to citizens or have some sort of a cooperative agreement with another entity that would run it or something. So it's not, like I say, it's not something that I'm saying we should do immediately. I just like someone to keep it on the radar, maybe designate some funds to investigate how and where. So I think that's a Parks and Rec issue.
So how big of, I'm just off the top of your head, have you given any thought to like the square footage you were having in mind? Because I'm wondering if a portion of the far northeast part of our kind of land could be carved out for some of that.
That's up there around the bend where the hospital is, that area?
No, I was thinking actually just east of where we have our skate park and north of where I'm thinking about having the softball field, like kind of that corner there that's where the bypass and, oh gosh, I just forgot the road.
Bushwick and G Street.
And G Street.
Oh, yeah. So ideally, I was thinking somewhere in, an acre or two.
Well, I'm now hearing dusty, so, but I guess, yeah, I mean, that would be something cool to have, a community garden.
Get a lot of traffic through there too with four-wheelers.
Yeah.
So maybe the planning commission could take a look at it and even hire a consultant or something to give some advice. It goes toward food security and a bunch of other things.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Chip is on it.
Dave's on it.
Not it.
Hey, the fire chief has had a family issue come up and he can't join us. So I'm sure we'll be discussing his request when it comes time for his budget. So the next person up is Joe Horton for DPW.
I have a few things on this list that tools that we need or equipment that we would need and would like. We were looking at a new dozer. I got a price on here for $450,000, but I got a quote back finally this morning, and it's $395 landed here in Nome for a new loader, so it's a little bit cheaper. And we want to replace one of our dump trucks. We got a 1996 auto car that came from the Alaska State DOT, and the bed is so rotten on it now. We're having a hard time welding to it anymore because it's cracking and rusting out and pieces are falling off, and it's just getting to be a dangerous truck to be driving around on the road hauling snow with the tailgate coming open and stuff like that. So we would like to get that replaced. And I put a dozer on here because the one at the Montefiore is a 1976 Cat, and it's about to the end of its life. Its engine's leaking. We haven't run it in 2 years. The transmission's really weak on it. It's leaking oil as fast as you can put it in. And the cab's all falling apart. It's all rattling apart. We replaced the hydraulic cylinders on it here a few years back, but they're leaking again. And so it's just a hazard to be running out there at the Montefiore. And I see we want to get some litter fence, portable ones, so we can put it on the Montefiore, because every year we got trash blowing out of there onto the close to the runway and stuff, and I see they put a fence up, but still, it's just an eyesore, and we get all that garbage blowing out of the Montefiore that we've been trying to cover up as soon as we can, and as soon as we can pick some up, we usually go out there and pick some trash up around the outside of the Montefiore. And what else? I put a pickup in there, a new vehicle, because we've been getting all the hand-me-downs from the police department. So we got our last Tahoe just kind of gave out on us here this winter, so we're just scrambling around to sharing vehicles. And we have a conveyor belt on here. It's not for one as bad, it's a safety issue for our tire shredder. We want one to feed the shredder instead of having somebody up there trying to throw tires in there.
What do they use at the landfill right now? At the landfills where you need the dozer? Or?
No, we need it at the Montefiore, but we're grabbing the one from the landfill and using that, but it's not heavy enough. It's just a little light dozer. You need a heavier one for compaction of construction debris and stuff like that. Something a little bit bigger. And we bring it back and forth, and it's just consuming. And
How often do you have to do that, do you think?
We must have brought it out there at least 5 or 6 times last summer. And in the wintertime, we bring that landfill dozer to town. We use it for pushing in our snow dumps. So that'd be another use we can use for it, because we have so many snow dumps around town and outlying area at ICU. And
Is this loader you asking for this year the one that you asked for last year?
yeah. And like this weekend, it would have been perfect. We could have had 3 loaders running and trying to keep up with it. Because you got one loader that heads north. They hit Iris and Fire Ridge. It goes up to ICU, goes up to Lester Bench, and up on Amble. So you got one loader that's doing that big a trip and then have to go back and forth all the time trying to keep up with the snow. If you had an extra one, we can just send one loader dedicated to IceView to push snow there, and the other 2, or the other loader running around up further.
I'll let other council members ask a question, but one thing that helped, was that last year, year before? I can't remember if it's through you or through John or who had it, but they had a list of everybody put their equipment and what kind of shape they're in, and
I think that was John. We're looking, we're going to do that because actually a number of our vehicles are starting to reach their,
Well, that's really useful, especially when you're thinking about this
I
kind of
was
stuff.
doing it during my quarterly reports and
Right.
stuff, and I just haven't done it in the last few.
Right, that'd be handy to have when we're making the
To do it.
decision.
I've talked to Joe, to keep account of, the hours, because there's a difference, obviously, as you know, there's hours on these heavy pieces of equipment versus mileage on our other pieces of equipment. So I've been asking Joe to keep an idea when we have to go out and, get a vehicle. But I also want to make sure that, while we have contracts with different providers to assist us, many of them also have primary contracts with other people, and they come to us after they finish their primary, contract, whether it's Q, Stampede, they come, they're not there at the front lines when we're dealing with the storm, because we just seem to be further down the list.
Yeah, they're cleaning parking lots and driveways and putting it in our right of way that we gotta deal with. Not the bigger contract, this, you got smaller ones running around doing that, but not, Key Truck and the Stampede, they're good about hauling their stuff away and taking care of their stuff.
So we will give you a comprehensive list of our fleet. And the Tahoe that I drive is having serious problems now. Even the Expedition, that is our backup vehicle, is having problems. And I don't know, we usually try to, the police get the new stuff, and then it moves down through the city. The pickup truck, I forget how the chiefs went to.
We got it for the landfill, but it was too big for us, so we gave it to the port and switched with one of their vehicles for a smaller vehicle for the landfill. So they ended up with the truck instead of us.
And then eventually it ends up in the city manager's possession. So,
And when the city manager doesn't, we get it.
You get to use government ones.
but we'll put together a complete list and the hours, because that's what I've been talking to Joe about. I want to know the hours on these trucks.
Yeah, we just had, like on our loader, we just had the engine and transmission rebuilt around 15,000 hours. Now I think we got 17,000 hours on that, and that's just in the past 2 years, so.
And then we just had to fix.
The transmission torque converter went out of the cat loader, and we had to have an ANSI mechanic come pull it apart, and it was only a $10 bolt that broke. And it cost us a lot of money to get it fixed. You gotta pull the cab off it and.
Some of our, one of the challenges that we face up here is our local providers do not have the computer software and that they need to diagnose the vehicles. And there are times when we fix, I think, school district equipment.
Yeah, we have the software for the Volvo loaders and stuff, and so we've helped school out, and we've helped the hospital out, and.
But as these things become more computer oriented, it's not gonna get better. And it's the same thing that's gonna be for the fire trucks too.
Yeah.
Also members on the phone, Zoom, YouTube, whichever direction we're using. Any questions for Joe while he's here?
This is Jennifer. I got a question. It sounds like the loader that you would like to purchase is for snow removal. Is that correct? Or were there other uses for it?
Well, we can use the heck out of it in the wintertime, but then we could share it with the port because, I talked to Chris Schumann. He said they use a loader about 10 hours a week at the port, but that's just, they probably use it more than that. They just gave me a number. And like last year, they didn't use it as much because they weren't busy. But when you have all the miners there and they're going around picking up stuff, they use it quite a bit. There was times last year that one of our loaders was down and we had to use our other one, and the port couldn't use one until we were done.
So they use it for about 10 hours in the summertime, you said?
Yeah, it's just they probably use it more than that when they're busy.
That's a week.
Yeah, that's a week, not a month. That's just a week. They usually get it
for a week. Okay, thank you for
they
that.
usually get it on
And
a Saturday or something.
so So how beneficial is this for the city to purchase a brand new loader if we can rent a loader per se in town for the 10 hours and the couple of storms that we have in town? Is there something that's more beneficial to us to actually own this piece of equipment? Or is it more beneficial for us in the long run to rent the equipment
I think
for the
it's,
10 hours that the port might need it and the 2 snowstorms that we get a year?
I think it's beneficial for us to own it because you don't know what you're getting. And you know what you have and what you're working with, and it fits with your implements, not having separate ones. Like, we like using U-blades to push snow, and then when you got a loader that only hooks up to a bucket, it does us no good. I mean, it takes us twice as long to do anything.
I mean, you know, I don't know if 2 snowstorms a year is fair, because I think in the last 6 months, we've had 3 to 4. We got another one coming our way. You know, and if we can't get our streets open, then we get, you know, customer complaints because we don't have the equipment, because we're waiting for the equipment to come from somebody else. You know, and it's possible some money could be taken from the landfill capping, which there seems to be a little bit of an excess in there, to help purchase this vehicle, because it's also providing for the safekeeping of the monofill, which is part of the you know, of the cost to do business. And there are times when we've rented equipment and it has shown up and it's not even usable. And this year we put in our contracts the statement that if it shows up and it's not usable, we're not paying for it, like we have in the years past. And making it very clear to the provider that, you know, we expect equipment that runs. And it, you know, and it's not our fault if it's not running. And we made that in all of our contracts, so it was very clear to the companies that are providing, you know, a service. We looked at the difference between a wet and a dry rental, and some people don't want us to do a dry rental, which would save us money. And they're charging us the same fee, whether it's a dry or wet rental. Because Jennifer, when we talked about this last year, you know, we've been trying to drill down to get that information, but I also didn't know that we may have an excess in the landfill account that could help assist pay for the vehicle. And we could look at leasing it too, and seeing what it would cost to lease it. And by that, I mean that's a lease to own. We haven't explored that up here, I don't think.
Any other council members have questions for Joe or the city manager on these pieces of equipment? I'm happy for you to hear that somebody is finally recognizing that there's extra money in that, or potential extra money in that dump fund, because that's been brought up.
We're looking at it. We're looking
in the past, and nobody's been really willing to look at it.
This is all that we have, unless the council has some goals that they would like to see accomplished. Mr. Chair. I mean,
I'm just looking at the rest of the wish list from the librarian,
No capital projects.
ongoing operations.
yeah, the museum and the library will be operational issues.
Are there any other questions from council members of the city manager about capital projects?
This is Jennifer. I forgot to ask about the conveyor for the tire shredder. I didn't think we were actually using that, so I'm curious why we have to replace the conveyor already.
We're not replacing it. We're not replacing it. We want another one to feed the shredder for safety issues.
Oh, gotcha. I remember the safety issues from last year, but so it's in addition to the one we already have.
Right.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you for that clarification.
Or we can take a 10-minute break.
Looks like we will take a 10-minute break if you have any other questions, if you didn't have anything else. Okay, we'll recess till 7 o'clock.
Shut
Yeah,
down.
I was just gonna shut down.
Guys and gal,
You're welcome.
Folks, remember, until they shut down, even that's recorded. So,
We're muted on YouTube, but GCI is still.
It's in there, so I'll fix it in the morning.
Any changes to the advertising?
Probably coming at 5 and go shovel.
Yeah.
Don't be surprised.
I don't think so.
Okay, so just run it as is, and tomorrow
Not
he
as
did
bad
give me
as it
some
was
price
this
breakdown
morning.
for black and white for the animals. So
I was
also,
hoping
and
I'll open the
You
ceiling.
can have movies.
And then I heard Jamie
the
calling.
problem was that you got stuck at home.
so was this system in place last meeting? The same system?
Same system that we had with.
Might be able to.
Okay, because people made comments, they watch on GCI, but they couldn't hear anybody.
The GCI is still going through that camera.
Right.
It's not coming through this, so it's.
So how's the sound getting?
Well, I'll do that.
I'm tired.
I see.
Oh, yeah. We're trying to ride on top of it.
Staying down here, but that used to feed into that somehow?
Yeah.
Oh.
Now you picked up there and got me.
But that reminds me, I have.
Oh, I was using my truck.
I have to write, just the normal months of public.
I went over there when the door was open. It wasn't.
Show up?
At the beginning of next week, so you can
Say
sign.
he was gonna try to get in, but he didn't.
I'm gonna go look.
So.
Well, the wind picked up too after that.
You're doing a great job.
Do you have a
Printed copy?
printed copy of just the agenda?
We'll get you that.
I don't know what happened to John, because hopefully this is going to be a quick meeting. I've shoveled 2 places today because we're shorthanded. I helped shovel out most of it from here, and then I went over to the police station and shoveled for a while. Just remember that,
I
chief.
saw you. I remember
that.
I saw the shovel.
Oh,
Anybody going down those steps, so.
Okay, I gotta go.
I got Dave running hard enough as it is. Are you gonna go home and go to bed now?
Regular time tomorrow, or do you want to do Wednesday with Mike?
Let's do Wednesday.
Okay, Wednesday night?
Mike was for doing.
I'm gonna go try to eat. I didn't even get lunch
You need me
today.
to hang for the second part of this? Sure, okay.
When you were a kid, did you skate over where New St. Joe's is?
What's that?
When you were a kid, was a skating rink where the New St. Joe's church is now?
Skating rink, softball field,
Right there.
Owens things, and the ice rink shack was towards the back of the church.
Yeah.
Catholic Church ruined everything, took all that land.
Yeah, and then the adults played there too. Softball.
Yeah,
And then they moved out to where our plant is.
Did they know Stedman Field had its problems at that time?
I don't know, I
Nobody
slid, I
nobody
probably got
cared at that
hurt.
time. Now look at that.
I think we did. But yeah,
Slosh through that green stuff.
yeah, we played, we ran up the hill onto the basketball court to try to catch the ball, and that, it was still like that. So,
It'd be nice for at least 1 year to have it relatively level.
yeah.
But it's about $40,000 in asphalt, just so you know.
Oh, yeah.
Because that's, and Blease is coming up on, he's got several things,
Now, they keep all the asphalt equipment up here, or it comes up when you guys want to go project?
I think it's the barn just getting the oil up here.
Nick has one here. Usually there isn't one here. You're lucky because they have the airport and bearing going on.
And then catch it when contractors are doing some other job.
Oh, so you try to get, okay, that makes
Other
sense.
stuff.
As long as you get to them.
That's what we're talking with the state, with Calvin, we're trying to answers from the council if they want to move forward, so we can, make sure they ship the oil up here to make the asphalt.
Yeah.
If not, it'll happen the following year, then someone will forget about it, and it won't get done, and then we'll talk about it again, and
Well, Pinnacle will be here for a couple of years, or 3, because you gotta do Bering, Airport, and then Sepulveda is
Stedman.
2 years, and then Stedman.
Kids definitely need something productive to do in a basketball court. Always keeps people pretty busy.
Well, they need something productive to do, period. And we didn't have anything for them to do last summer.
Right.
And, it's also been part of this discussion about, what do the kids have to do up here? Well, if all the playground opportunities are shut down, which they were, then they go to the bars. And in the winter months, they still go to the bars to socialize and everything else. There's pool tables and all that, but there's nothing for them in a non-alcoholic.
Very good warning, thank you.
And of course, the bowling, they couldn't even get bowling teams this year. The bowling.
Try to call it.
Number one, I think if they can come down with the vaccine for 12-year-olds and above, and you get more.
Just a system pressure thing.
The adults here.
Well, we're
That's
at,
part of normal.
yeah, but we're at 70% adult vaccination.
Yeah, down to nothing.
80 to 90% is not that far away. And
Had the grudge.
community, peer pressure works too
on
for adults. And,
Water.
I used to see it in
bleeding it.
senior citizens. We had a senior citizen center. Oh my God, you would thought they were back in high school. So,
All right, that's not so.
That's why I went to sleep so early Friday, I was really worried.
Thank you, Dave. See y'all later, Dave. Make sure everybody knows I appreciate all the work that they've done.
How's it going?
Good, how about with you?
Good.
So these are the chairs for the next generation?
Yep.
Stay safe.
Just like the wall paneling. I suspect if you actually licked the wall paneling, you could still taste cigarette smoke.
Yeah, I'm gonna trust you on that one. And so they used to actually smoke here in meetings?
Everywhere, I'm pretty sure. I don't know. I never saw it, but I'm assuming.
I'm assuming.
Everywhere else, yeah.
I saw you today going into the fire hall earlier when I was coming down. How are you feeling too? All your stuff I see, it looks like is your armor plating.
So I can actually swim, which is amazing, but I can't do horizontal bench press with 2 10-pound dumbbells.
You're lucky to be alive.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's how you look at it.
You want to know the funniest part of this whole trip, this whole thing, which isn't really very funny?
Okay, let's hear the funny.
I got a bill from No Volunteer Ambulance Department for the run between the hospital and the medevac plane for getting hurt on a search and rescue. I laughed when I gave it to our insurance company, and she laughed also.
I would have brought it and put it on poster board and show your, take it to the fire hall and to the ambulance hall and say, just want to let you know.
Well, I've got it taped to my office door. It'll be there for years.
I know, I heard they found the guys from Brevig Mission, and where else were they? Was it White Mountain they were?
Yep. They were this side of the top shelter cabin.
I can't believe the idiots went out yesterday at 5 o'clock.
There's trail stakes.
There was 2 of them on one machine coming from Brevig. I'm sorry, going to Brevig, and then another 2 coming from White Mountain to Nome, also on one snow machine. What could go wrong?
Nothing.
One ran out of gas.
From what both did.
Oh, they both did? I knew one did. Jimmy told me one did.
And even if they hadn't turned back, they wouldn't have had enough gas to make it. They'd have ran out by Bonanza Channel.
Trying to get to that cheap gas in Nome. White Mountain's cheaper than Nome, isn't it?
It is.
It's kind of cozy. Look at you guys.
Well, we can make it a little longer. We can make it going over this way, one more, but then they'd be sitting on top of Brian.
Yeah, nobody wants that.
Good turnout on that breakfast. It was
Yeah.
a good fundraiser.
Look like you guys are pretty busy there.
No one did well. No one did great.
I'll get the spot. We shouldn't have to wait 45 minutes, but I guess Tom went to the wrong place. He's like, oh, I know where Bryant lives, and he went to my old house.
Right.
Not gonna enjoy it there.
I had on the note 6th Avenue between 5th and 6th, I think.
Boy, is this a pack.
Okay, well, that was the 7 o'clock bell, so up to your discretion when we start.
7 o'clock, we'll call a meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Councilmember Brown.
Here.
Councilmember Doug Johnson is excused. Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Here.
Councilmember Martinson. Councilmember Martinson.
I'm here.
There we go. Councilmember Reeder.
Here.
Councilmember Topcock.
Here.
Youth Member Okalizek.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Okay, we have an agenda before us. Are there any additions to the agenda, or could we get an approval? Motion for approval?
I move to approve the agenda for March 8th, 2021.
Second.
Roll call?
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes?
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, we have the minutes from February 22nd, 2021 in our packet. Would I get a motion to approve the minutes, please?
I move to approve the minutes of the February 22nd, 2021 regular meeting.
Second.
Under discussion, is there any additions or corrections?
This is Jennifer. I have one or two corrections that I saw on page. Yeah, I'm trying to find my sticky notes here. Oh, there it is. Page 13 in the packet, page 5 of 8 of the minute. Towards the bottom of the page, it says council member, and it doesn't have a name. And I think it should be mine because I asked if there was any discussion on the pool and ice rink.
Noted.
Noted?
And then the last one was the last page, page 7 of 8 or page 15 of the packet. It's like towards the very bottom, it's starting with the Alaska Constitution Convention. The space just got in the wrong spot.
Noted, and I will correct them.
Any others? Okay, hearing none, could you get a roll on that?
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yeah.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, under communications, we have letter A, a letter from Granite Peacock to the city of Nome regarding thank you garbage works and street cleaners. And just because it's sweet and it's cute and it's very short, I'm just gonna read it. Dear City of Nome, I would like to thank the garbage workers because even on holidays, they would still pick up trash. I'd also like to thank the street cleaners too, because on holidays, they plowed the roads. Thank you, Granite Peacock. Under B, we have a letter from Nome Preschool Manager Cabrera, thanking the city of Nome for including the Nome Preschool in the 2020 budget. Under letter C, we have a memo from Clerk Hammond to the Nome Common Council regarding the council determination of disposition of untimely filed sales tax exemption forms. And maybe if I could just ask the city clerk to give us some information on that.
And so one is a sales tax and one is a disabled vet exemption. Both were received after deadlines. The sales tax has been granted in the past. I think she just missed, just had her calendar screwed up and doing other things. And the disabled vet exemption might be a new one and didn't know the deadline. But both appear to be compliant with existing ordinance and statute.
Is there any council member who'd like to discuss this further or make a motion to approve these exemption applications that were late?
I would move.
To determine the sales tax exemption forms as timely filed.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none. Roll call.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reader.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Is there any council member who would like to entertain the disabled veteran exemption request.
When I made the motion, I thought it was for both.
You made it for both? Okay, I'm sorry.
Discussion?
Thank you for clarification. I didn't hear that, so they were for both. Letter D is a letter from Dominion Voting to the city of Nome regarding their suite system. And I think what I saw in there was that they were going to discontinue supporting that. Is that correct, Clerk Hammond?
They are discontinuing the old hardware support that we have used. Last year, the state went to their new, I think it's called Democracy Suite. And I paused to let them work out all the kinks before we adopted it, and I thought we'd have another year or two, but they have chosen to no longer support it. So I have reached out to Ms. Latour asking for a little bit of information and what the costs might be, and I have yet to hear back.
Okay. And then letter E is our City of Nome budget calendar that's in the packet. And now we will go to citizens' comments. And citizens' comments can be made through Zoom or phone call, is that correct?
We're not set up on this phone anymore.
Okay, so they would make how would they?
The mayor was going to move away from having that available because frankly, anybody can now come to the council meeting. There are no restrictions on any public place or business inside the city of Nome, and we have now reached a 70% vaccination rate in Nome.
Okay. So if people would like to make a comment, how do they do so?
Well, that was one of the things that I know that was going to need to be discussed if people wanted to submit email comments, which we have seen before. Would they have to be placed at a certain time? Or would they just call into this phone, the 6599 number?
We are currently developing protocol and standard operating procedures for this based on other cities that do similar procedures. I'm working on it.
So right now, the comments would be,
I'm sorry.
go ahead.
Oh, sorry. This is Amy Phillips-Chan, and I was just wondering if this would be an okay time. Glenn had invited us, and I don't really have any capital project requests to share, but I thought I might just mention a little bit about our 2 COVID-19 initiatives that we're working on, if that's okay.
Sure.
Okay, great. Thanks. So, public closure of the Richard Foster Building due to COVID-19 has really kind of opened up some alternative opportunities for the museum to engage with the community. So 2 of our ongoing collaborative projects are a COVID-19 oral history project and an artwork initiative. And both of these have kind of encouraged community members and artists to reflect and respond and share their lived experiences of the pandemic. And oral narratives and artworks that are being shared are going to be archived for future generations here at the museum. And then also featured in a special exhibit and publication with an online component to increase accessibility. So we're currently in phase 2 of this project. We just recently, my colleague, R.B. Smith, who came on board as an oral historian with the museum, and I shared a presentation during an online conference last week about those 2 initiatives and a special session on museums and artists responding to the pandemic. And as we're kind of working on phase 2, we are partnering with additional artists from across the region to create artwork, and then also starting a second round of oral history interviews, kind of our after post peak or our spike in November. So that's just kind of a little plug right here that if anybody would be interested in speaking or sharing about your experiences of the pandemic, we'd love to hear from you. Carol Gales is coming on board as a second oral historian with the project. So you could either reach out to her or me, and we'd be happy to visit with you about your experience and kind of share that and record it for future generations. So thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any other citizens' comments? Hearing none, we don't have any unfinished business on the agenda, so we'll go to new business. And we have a first reading of an ordinance. City Clerk, will read the ordinance.
O-21-0301, an ordinance amending Nome Code of Ordinances, Chapter 2.10, Acquisition and Disposal of Real Property.
We have a motion to approve the first, under this ordinance on the first reading.
I move to approve the first reading of ordinance 210301. And then I'm supposed to say in advance the second reading?
Your second.
We have a first and a second. Do we have, under discussion, do we have some discussion?
This grew out of the discussion of the Planning Commission to have over-the-counter sales if we do not receive a bid. And the attached resolution was, the Planning Commission has been supportive of this since January 8th of 2019.
Any other questions by City Council? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Reeder.
Yes.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Next on the agenda, we have a resolution setting the dates for the 2020 Board of Equalization. I have a motion to pass this resolution.
I move to pass resolution 210301.
Second.
Any discussion on this? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeder.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Clarification, was I supposed to let you read that? Okay, our next one on the agenda is R-210302. Would the city clerk please read this resolution?
R-210302, a resolution designating Charles Chip Leeper as acting city manager for the periods March 19 to March 30 and July 1 to July 12, 2021.
We have a motion to approve this resolution.
I move to approve resolution 210302.
Second.
Any discussion? Anybody that does not want to let the city manager? Hearing none, you want a roll call, please?
Councilmember Brown.
Yes.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
Yes.
Councilmember Martinson.
Yes.
Councilmember Reeder.
Yeah.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Now we come to the utility manager's report.
It's too early.
Oh.
Hello, Ken Morton on behalf of Nome Joint Utilities. On the power generation side, sometime in February, we had a failure of some hardware that helps protect one of our EWTs up on top of the hill. And it took a while to isolate the challenge because, well, it's pretty horrible weather up there and need to use a tracked vehicle and whatnot. But the crew was able to isolate it, do a workaround, and both wind turbines are operational again. And we will get that part fixed. On the tank farm front, we are continuing to work with the city attorney and the attorney that we have that helps us with fuel matters to put out an RFP this month to potentially sell our existing tank farm, the assets with the idea that, and then the real property would, of course, remain the city's for leasing. But we would use these funds to help offset the cost of our new tank farm construction down below on the West Nome tank farm parcel. We get a good price, great. If not, we will relocate the tanks. Also, the utility has locked in 1.6 million gallons of its fuel delivery purchase, which is going to be about 2 million gallons overall. But we did do an early lock-in, looking at where prices were and trying to prognosticate where they were likely to go and have a price that we're comfortable with. On the line crew side, the first batch of streetlights that the council funded have been installed. The second batch is either in order or, is either in shipment or will be shipped by the end of this month. We are issuing a purchase order with Eaton for the advanced metering system that we need to install to replace the one that we have now that has reached its end of life. It's a 2-year project. This will fund about half of it, a little over $200,000. But on the water sewer side, we had a major water leak on Karstens Way about 2 weeks ago over the weekend. Pretty significant leak. The crew worked something like 30 hours straight in order to contain it, which is madness, but they did what they needed to do and they took care of business. Any questions for things utility-wise?
Any questions for utilities?
Thank you.
Now we have the city manager's report.
Okay, well, a lot of what was in the report was discussed as part of the project development proposals. The rec center, more importantly, the swimming pool is now open fully, and I know that a lot of people are taking advantage of that. We're looking at having a basketball tournament as part of the Winterfest, and we're also looking at having a snowmobile race for children up around the rec center, but releases will have to be in place for the children to participate. One of the concerns that has come up is rabies with the fox. We are working with the hospital and having a rabies clinic down here every Friday from 3 to 6 for vaccinations for cats and dogs. So that hopefully that if they should be bitten by a rabid fox, they can survive. and not bite a child. So we're looking at trapping, which is really not our responsibility, but we are hearing the fox are inside the city, and we're going to be looking at some trapping. I'm hopefully going to be talking with the person tomorrow. I was scheduled to speak with him today, but a lot of things got pushed back. Obviously, under my report, the letter from the State Department of Natural Resources, we could not complete the project. We had not expended any money. So we had a conversation with the state that the person who was going to manage the project will reapply so we can get signage out there for the King Islanders. But the positive in the conversation I had with state officials is developing a tour map of the city, a walking tour, and then also developing the signage that would assist in that walking tour. And that would be really good to get into place before the cruise lines come back in full force in 2022. And we're going to start working on that because they're very much open to creating that tour with the city of Nome, especially if we start using F Street as how people are going to come in from the cruise ships into Nome. Other than that, there's not much else other than we're wrapping up the CARES Act funding. We will probably have in the neighborhood between $260,000 to $275,000 in CARES Act funds available for a phase 7. We are looking at targeting at businesses in the hotel, the hospitality industry, and restaurants and bars would be also part of that. Based on sales tax, we collect between $40,000 to $50,000 a year in sales tax because of Iditarod events. That's $800,000 to $1 million less in money that'll be flowing through the economy. So that $275,000 back into the hospitality industry will probably be pretty welcomed. We don't have a plan yet. I'm more than open for some suggestions, but we'll have something because we need to spend this money down. We're anticipating $800,000 in new, I don't know whether they're going to call it CARES funding, but out of the $1.9 trillion funding to revitalize the economy. We are also looking at $171,049.62 that has been funded through DHSS. We're talking about how that would be impacted into healthcare and improving healthcare for people in our community during this time, whether it's PPE materials, whether it's housing for homeless, non-congregate housing, or how do we bring about health equity, which is money directed to the poorer members of our communities. We're also looking at it to help fund operations out at the airport, where we continue testing and the follow-up process on that. So that's my report, sir.
Are there any questions of the city manager?
Moving on.
You're getting off easy. So you had mentioned the, one question. On the King Island East End Park and Panel Preservation Fund, you mentioned there's going to be possibly another provider that would provide those services?
Where actually the current provider could not accomplish it this year, and they're looking at accomplishing it coming up. The state has encouraged us to put the grant back in. It's just been a difficult time getting the proper parties together because of COVID-19.
Not lost, it's deferred.
Well, the money has been returned so it can be reallocated, which they were appreciative of.
Okay, which brings us to our second citizens' comments. If there's any citizens that'd like to make a comment, now's the time to do so. Okay, hearing none, we have council member comments.
Councilmember Brown.
I have no comments.
Councilmember Mark Johnson.
I have no comments either.
Councilmember Martinson.
Just one, being on the Zoom and having the cameras and the sound is nice. It's a welcome upgrade. Thank you.
Councilmember Reeder.
I just wanted to say thank you to Granite Peacock for writing that letter to the council. That's awesome that he's so young and wanting to get involved in his city government. I appreciated that letter. It was super cute. I'm glad Mark read it out loud for everybody to see. I wasn't aware that citizen comments were supposed to be made in person, and I'm not sure how many other people were. So I don't know. Was there a notice given that this was a requirement for people to actually show up to the meeting from now on and make their comments, and that the phone call wasn't going to be available anymore?
I'm not sure, Councilmember Reeder, I'm not sure what has been conveyed. I know that now that we are streaming and Zooming, and that more importantly, the facility is now open. I think there was a thought process among some that we were going to move away from the phone. And I think this was disconnected when we made the major upgrades here.
Okay, I think we did a poor job at letting people know, because like I said, I didn't know, I didn't read anything, and I try to keep on top of all that stuff. So I hope that nobody missed their opportunity to share any comments that they had with us this evening. And I know a lot of people claim to reach out to council members, and maybe I'm not the one they reach out to, so I hope other people are actually getting reached out to, because I see lots of Facebook posts, but I tend not to reply to Facebook posts because they're not directed at me. So I hope that people find their venue, because I know that was a contentious issue when we first started all this pandemic distancing and all that stuff. So is it my understanding that people are now able to come into City Hall without restrictions?
Well, we are asking people if they come into the offices to wear a mask. We are not heavy-handedly enforcing that. Actually, because, and coming into here, like tonight, no one is wearing a mask because everybody in here has been vaccinated. And that's the whole question. When do we stop having to wear a mask or allow people to come in? But I think there is even though we have put the news out and we continue to put the news out, the city of Nome is open. It's the businesses that are putting into place their restrictions. It's not the city of Nome.
So are we going to sunset any of our ordinances?
Well, there is the only thing that sunsets is going to be June 30th, when the ordinance that you created to last longer than 60 days, that'll probably be able to sunset now. And that's why we're pushing.
Do we need to have a meeting to do that, or is that something that we can just do, or how does that work? I'm not sure what this is going to look like.
Well, to me, the ordinance would just sunset. Just goes away.
Okay, but you said that now you're allowing people to walk into a city facility with no mask, and you're not enforcing it if they don't. So is now an appropriate time to allow that to sunset, or should we wait till June?
Well, the hospital will tell you they would recommend waiting to June, because what we are enforcing is people, when they come back into the city of Nome, is that they take a test or agree to quarantine because they're traveling from the rest of Anchorage, from the rest of Alaska, which still is having 100 to 125 diagnosed COVID cases every day. We right now have not had any traveler spread up here, but we've had some community spread, which is why we're still encouraging people. Yes, you should wear a mask because it is up here in the community, but it has not been brought up by travel spread because of the testing that we've done. So,
Okay.
yes, I am eagerly awaiting the end of this. And the city is making an all-out effort to work with the hospital to get people vaccinated.
Okay, and I would just like to thank all the people who were involved in putting on this winter fest. I wish I was there to enjoy all the festivities. I'm grateful that somebody is out there looking out for the well-being of all of our community members and their mental health and getting them outside and getting them involved in some activities. And I'm just going to let you know, Mr. Sexton, that you need to get with the word snow machine and not snowmobile. You fully showed your lower 48 self there. So I just hope that helps.
Thank you very much. I'm always wondering, is it snow machine or snowmobile? So thank you I will try to make sure I do not do that.
You bet. Anything to help.
Thank you.
Councilmember Topcock.
Yeah, just real quick. Super awesome Zoom angle camera operations going on over here. I love it. Really appreciate being able to call in by Zoom. I know we're getting a handle on things and hopefully we'll reach herd immunity soon, but I think it pays to be extra cautious and and as we move forward, we never know if something might break out again or a new strain might emerge or maybe the vaccine isn't as effective as we thought. So I know it's hard. We're all itching. I'm itching to be done with all of this, but I appreciate taking a cautious approach. Super excited about the community garden idea. I'm really glad Gerald brought that back up. I'm a little disappointed about the signage. I get, things come up and this has been kind of a rough year for doing things like that, but it would be great to prioritize that going forward, just especially so we can bring forward more of the history of our community. It's thousands of years is what our community spans, really, if you think about it. The city of Nome as an institution has been here since 1901, but, we've had people on this land for thousands and thousands of years. So I would really love to see a more robust presentation of our community's history and diversity and just all the beautiful things about our community being displayed, especially as we, potentially have more tourism and cruise ships coming into town. And then just the last thing, I'm just thinking forward to elections in the fall. I didn't know if we'd made any progress on looking into potentially taking away the seat designation.
We are currently working with the city attorney on that. I believe he's kicked the draft back to me, and now it's time to look through it. It should be up for first reading, possibly 3/22 or at the latest April 12th.
Awesome, super exciting. Thank you so much for looking into that. I know I was counsel my tribes don't do change your election ordinance right before an election, so I just want to make sure that we don't lose that. So I'm glad to hear that progress is being made. And again, really appreciate all of our staff and all the work that you do. Koyana.
Youth member Okalisik.
I have no comment.
Mayor's report.
Well, since Mayor Hanlon's not here, we'll defer his activity report and his reappointment, I guess, to the next meeting. But since I have the floor, there was one person trying to call in during citizens' comments that weren't able to do it. That happens to be my wife, and she just wanted to congratulations to it's International Women's Day.
Yes, it
And
is.
to recognize that and recognize all the women in town and throughout the world. So we do not have an executive session today. A motion for adjournment.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you. Motion adjourned at 7:36.
That's the fastest council meeting we've had since I've been here.
That's okay with Adam.
That's awesome. Good job, guys.
Aloha.
Aloha.
Yep, have a good night.
Okay.
Mahalo, everybody.
Good night.
Well, it was 32 today here, just enough to make a mess.